A narcissist often seeks to disable those around them, making them feel incapable or even causing them to lose the ability to do things for themselves. This allows the narcissist to take over completely, only to repeatedly emphasize how much they handle alone. They cultivate a group of dependents, passive and disempowered, so they can complain about them while portraying themselves as the hero, the martyr, the indispensable leader, the overburdened provider, or the lone warrior holding everything together. The best example here is how powerful men have historically abused the collective man, making them their dummies, and then how the collective man has, in turn, abused the collective woman through patriarchy and misogyny for thousands of years. This systemic oppression mirrors how individuals, whether men or women, can perpetuate similar dynamics on a smaller, more personal scale, such as when an individual woman does the same thing to a man at home. These patterns exist, and sometimes one dynamic stems from or feeds into the other. Again, we see this pattern of a narcissist creating a group of dummies around themselves. These people weren't like that in the beginning, it was deliberately manufactured. This pattern occurs in all settings: family, friendships, workplaces, romantic relationships, anywhere there is a relationship. Important note, there are also situations where a group is genuinely passive and expects one person to manage everything. In this case, the doer becomes the one abused by the collective. This often happens when harmful social expectations are placed on someone, where entitlement creates direct manipulation, enforces the imbalance. A common example is mothers who are expected to handle everything while entitled family members do nothing, or just so little. This dynamic exists across all types of relationships: family, friendships, workplaces, romantic relationships, just like the other situation that looks similar but operates in reverse, with the abuse dynamic flowing the other way. Often there is also a mix where it could have started one way, and then it turned the other way through solidifying the dynamic. It is important to always remember that every dynamic has its narcissistic counterpart. They may look similar, but they function very differently. It's impossible to understand the truth without knowing the full history of a situation. Narcissists always manufacture their own false version of events, creating a false reality that traps the abused in a double bind. They seed these distorted narratives into their narcissistic system, people, communities, and social circles, where they spread further through seemingly harmless casual conversations and gossip, solidifying the lie as truth. The narcissistic system, with its mechanisms, is the core of narcissistic abuse. Without it, narcissistic abuse wouldn't be possible. Groups, communities, society, and even humanity at large, through its norms, are deeply narcissistic, which is why this system functions so effectively. The underlying pattern of control, manipulation, and invalidation is a pervasive system that operates on both collective and individual levels, reinforcing cycles of abuse. Once you start to recognize it, you see how this parasitic, predatory matrix is everywhere, constantly replicating itself. It operates through mirroring, inversion, and distortion, creating a world where everything is part of the system, and we, as individuals, are all unknowingly part of it. Every person becomes a reflection of this dynamic, simultaneously a victim, an abuser, and an enabler of the narcissistic system. The roles shift and overlap, but they never truly dissolve. The deeper you dig into these patterns, the clearer it becomes that at the core, there's this parasitic, predatory energy driving everything. All the behaviors, emotions, and actions that seem so separate and distinct are just manifestations of this core force. It's not just an isolated incident or issue, it's the very structure that underlies our interactions, and it continues to repeat itself, relentlessly. There's always a mirror effect in play. Every abusive situation mirrors a reversal, as if everything has its opposite or counterpart in the system. The abuser creates a distorted reality where the victim is made to feel complicit, and vice versa. The struggle to break free is endless, as it's woven into the very fabric of our systems, both individual and collective. This cycle keeps regenerating, but once you see it for what it is, you can begin to untangle it. Even though the deeper you go, the more pervasive the patterns appear. At its root, it's always about this predatory energy that feeds off everything, draining, distorting, and continuing the cycle indefinitely unless we can disconnect and reclaim our power. Another, more covert form of control is disguised as care, taking over responsibilities while subtly discouraging any attempts to regain independence or contribute. Over time, you start to feel like you just can't do anything on your own, and you begin to rely on their so-called kindness. They train you to feel helpless, systematically taking away your power and blocking your abilities. In some cases, the narcissist won't openly complain that they do everything. Instead, they present themselves as helpers and givers. However, they become uncomfortable, sometimes even aggressive and abusive, when you try to stand on your own feet. They may make snarky comments or sabotage your progress. Their goal is to prevent you from growing because they want control over you and to maintain a certain facade and status for themselves. They want to present themselves as certain characters, rescuers, helpers, fighters, heroes, martyrs, or victims, depending on what serves their agenda. And if you want to be independent and share an equal part of the tasks or chores, they will despise you for it. But if you don't, they'll accuse you of being selfish and lazy, claiming that they do everything by themselves. In many cases, you might be doing the exact same amount of work, or even more, but their narrative won't change. It's all about power and control. It is not about getting things done. Your human logic doesn't apply here, because you are dealing with a host of predatory, parasitic programming and/or consciousness. They will lash out whenever you try to talk to them, explain yourself, or make them see your point. They act so genuinely hurt, as if you don't want to cooperate, and it's mind-boggling. You just can't understand what it's all about. They play the victim or act righteously, and their emotions feel so real, so intense, that over time, you begin to believe you're the problem. You start to feel bad, worthless, and filled with extreme frustration and self-hatred. This dynamic will make you think you're a monster, and you'll feel lucky that this wonderful person stays with you. This is incredibly dangerous, because they begin to transform you into the role they've created for you. If they want to be the victim or martyr, they need to create an abuser to complete the narrative. If you notice any signs of this, run as fast as you can. They will shape you into someone who hurts them, and no one will believe you because the proof will seem obvious, their case will appear clear. This situation may seem similar to when an actual abuser blames the victim, saying, "Look what you made me do." But in many cases, it's true. Through consistent manipulation, they've effectively transformed you into the abuser in their story. Be especially cautious of individuals who are deeply programmed with victim or martyr narratives, people who believe their suffering is a necessary path to salvation or reward, like a promise of heaven. If they aren't martyrs, they feel they won't reach this idealized state. These individuals are extremely dangerous because they may manipulate others into playing their designated role in their martyrdom, using guilt and emotional pressure to create an imbalance that serves their own narrative. Men, especially, may recognize this dynamic from experiences with other men, such as when some men attack others for no reason other than their own prejudice, then turn around and blame the victim. There's also the situation where a false victim provokes someone until they lose control and react. In this case, they now have proof of the violence, but no one sees the abuse that led up to the outburst, leaving the provocation and manipulation hidden from view. With a narcissist, genuine conversation is nearly impossible. Sometimes, they may pretend to listen, even agreeing that you're right, but within a short time, the same toxic cycle repeats. There's never any lasting change. In healthy relationships, this is okay, it's a part of being human, and we all make mistakes. But with a narcissist, when they revert to their original harmful behavior, they will twist it, making you feel stupid, crazy, or like you're lying, painting you as the monster for simply reminding them of what you had agreed upon. They'll make it feel like your attempt to address their hurtful behavior is unjust, and you'll end up doubting your own perception of reality. After you've poured out all your energy, but still holding on to a bit of yourself to avoid hitting the breaking point where you want to leave, they will switch tactics. They might apologize, promising they won't do it again, acting brilliant and full of remorse. But by that time, they've already drained your power and consumed your life force. This is how they operate, feeding off your energy while leaving you depleted. This is how things typically unfold with a narcissist when you attempt to establish a fair distribution of responsibilities, such as setting up a chore schedule. They will constantly complain that you're not doing enough, even if you're doing more than your fair share. When you try to bring structure to the situation, they will resist, because it would reveal the imbalance. It's important to also recognize the role of societal conditioning and entitlements, because you or the other person might be unfairly expected to do more due to narcissistic societal rules. These norms can blind us to healthy dynamics. To create balance, we must first deconstruct these societal expectations. However, with a narcissist, peace is never achievable. They thrive on drama and chaos, and their existence depends on keeping the imbalance alive. At some point, they may agree to your idea of a schedule, giving you the false sense that you've made progress. But soon after, they'll sabotage the plan by taking over tasks that are supposed to be your responsibility. They'll argue, claiming they don't live in a hotel and aren't cleaners, ridiculing the idea of a schedule, making you feel like it's absurd. The schedule would expose the true division of labor, removing the tool of confusion that allows them to manipulate the situation. With a clear plan in place, they'd have to work harder to distort things and confuse you. But instead of accepting clarity, they'll distort everything they can, just so they can maintain the atmosphere of chaos and confusion, which is what they truly thrive on. With a narcissist, there's never a true resolution. It's an endless cycle where their ego is constantly fed while you gradually lose more of your energy. In some cases, the toxic dynamic stays between the two of you, and they don't bring it outside, but the damage is still being done. In many situations, however, the narcissist manipulates people around you, twisting their perceptions to align with their narrative. Soon, everyone is programmed to see you in a negative light, and you're left with only two options: distance yourself from the psychopathy or be forced to live by the narcissist's twisted rules. The narcissist slowly makes you invisible, erasing your sense of self. They gradually erode your will, your thoughts, and even your hobbies. Everything becomes centered around them, and things will only be great as long as it's all about them. They'll only love you if you stay within their game. In a narcissistic environment, equality doesn't exist. They are the best, the smartest, the funniest, and the most important. Meanwhile, you're made to feel like a weirdo, constantly having to live according to their rules. If you step outside of their game, you'll be made to feel like everything you do and enjoy is strange, lame, or too much, depending on the narcissist's mood. It's incredibly hard to break free from the grip of a narcissist. It's much easier to see the harm caused by narcissism when you're in a healthy environment. In a safe space, you can regain clarity and perspective, often in solitude. Unfortunately, narcissists are everywhere, and society itself tends to be narcissistic, though often in a milder, unconscious way, which can make it even harder to recognize. This well-meaning but narcissistic system operates on unconscious abuse, and its unity often depends on feeding off others. In such an environment, solitude often becomes the only refuge, offering the safety and clarity needed to maintain a healthy mindset. Web of narcissistic manipulation.